Can you guys hear me? Yes? All right. I can't stand still, so I asked them to give me the mic. But thrilled to be here to talk about the role of DTC in an omnichannel strategy. There's the clicker. But before I get into it a little bit, a very quick intro on Clorox, because before I joined, I had no idea that Clorox was a CPG company with a whole portfolio of brands like Hidden Valley Ranch, Burt's Bees, Brita water filters, a couple of supplements brand, Kingsford. So not just the cleaning supplies brand that we all know and has been in the news for way too much the last few years. And so direct-to-consumer, a little bit of history. A bunch of us came in 2019 actually from D2C startups. A lot of these are consumer brands. And the idea was to help to build, to launch, and to grow e-commerce capabilities for the portfolio of brands within Clorox. Originally, it was also to potentially launch pure D2C brands underneath Clorox as well. That's a strategy we've walked back a little bit from. But what has been really interesting is sitting at that intersection of legacy CPG and then D2C startups, really been able to see that shift in consumer behavior that we're all experiencing, and of course accelerated by COVID, but really I think a lot of these forces has been at play for a while. And so three of the themes that we see is consumers really expect brands to meet them in the digital and the physical world, that everywhere commerce idea. And consumers are empowered and more in control of their data than ever before. And on top of that, demanding privacy and personalization, expecting brands to really tailor experiences to them. Again, no surprise, omnichannel is here to stay. A 30% growth in e-commerce sales since pre-COVID. Those are stabilizing. And nearly double-digit year-on-year growth expected for the next 5 years. So this is really a force that Clorox and probably a lot of you in CPG companies are trying to figure out on how to adapt on. And meanwhile, consumer behaviors are shifting. It is harder than ever to get that brand loyalty from consumers, especially those younger consumers, and it's easier than ever to lose it. 40% of consumers are shopping from both different brands and different retailers since COVID-19. No surprise, a majority of consumers research and shop both in-store and online for their purchases. And 76% of consumers expect the companies to understand their needs and expectations. So all of this really necessitates brands to be nimble, to be flexible, to be able to adapt, and to have two-way communication with consumers, especially among the younger consumers. They want brands that feel authentic to them. They want to co-create. They want to have their voice heard. None of these things are really a muscle that a traditional CPG company has really had to exercise, right? But kind of the good news is D2C, that's kind of like our DNA coming from startups. And so the idea of where we are now is that direct-to-consumer is as much about a how do we approach problems, how do we adapt, as it is about building this revenue channel. Originally, it very much was, let's launch D2C. It's all about sales and revenue, better margins, own the relationship. What we realize is that unless we offer a really compelling reason for consumers to shop direct, you're always going to have consumers who want to just add a product to their Amazon cart or to pick up something in store in Target. And so we've really pivoted what this group, what my group stands for and what we're existing to do. And so it now is about incremental omni revenue. What is that halo effect? On most of our e-commerce enabled websites, you can add to cart, purchase from the site. We also give you the find a retailer price comparison option so that you can make that choice when you're on a product page or when you're in store. Of course, attracting that high quality first party data, having purchase data tied to actual email addresses, there is almost no more valuable data than that to build off of. And so a lot of what we're doing is what can we test, where can we be kind of the tip of the spear for the broader brand. whether it's in innovation, putting up even a ghost campaign or a product that hasn't fully launched yet, getting some insights before we might bring it into shelf 9 months later. And so it really is this idea of like the rapid iteration and having a lean and agile team that sits embedded with the various business units to be able to ideate day in and day out and help to think about planning a little bit differently. Folks who are very data is our DNA, testing is our DNA, and that kind of just helps to create a different dynamic. We also know there's things that we aren't, we're not the retail experts, right? And so it's always this two-way learning that we're having internally. And so we've launched a bunch of brands, actually, and so data is really key to what we're doing. So part of that is actually started from 4 years ago, multiple e-commerce platforms, different data systems, pipes didn't connect, to over the last 18 months, we've launched, we've relaunched, we've re-platformed 9 different brands. And so some are new, like the actual Clorox cleaning brand itself, prior to July of last year, had no transaction capabilities on the site. And so we are going in with what is the unique value, both for the brand, what do they want to learn, and for a consumer before we launch something. So for cleaning, it is the idea of bundles targeting younger consumers. You're about to move into your first apartment, you go to Target, you see like 200 different cleaning supplies. How are you supposed to know how to pick? And so this is a guided shopping bundle. You go through a quiz, and we suggest the wipes, the toilet cleaner, the disinfecting mist, and we'll give you free shipping if you hit a certain shipping threshold, right? And so that's the reason to be for cleaning. For Brita water filters, it is that filter subscription, that filter reminder, making sure that it is super easy for consumers to make sure that they're getting fresh water all of the time. For Burt's Bees, this is one of those in skincare, you almost have to have direct-to-consumer, but the original idea used to be, let's throw every SKU that we possibly have onto the website, and it was kind of like a hot mess of a site. And so with the relaunch and the re-platform, it was, let's think about navigation on the site a little bit differently. How can we get someone who might be a lip balm consumer to also explore some of the skincare or the towelettes? Again, looking at the data then to create unique bundles or holiday gifting campaigns behind that, so that mix of content and commerce. And then the most recent one, which we just launched in March, that I'm maybe most excited about, there were 4 different supplements brands within Clorox. There still are, but they were 4 different websites. So a probiotics, your collagen powder, your magnesium powder. What we did is actually launch one site, kind of like the Gap.com model, so that you can add different brand products into your cart, one share checkout. We can help you with regimen building, and then also volume discounts and subscriptions all wrapped into it. And so this is one that I'm really excited to think about. What is the future potential of something like this, right? Like opens up the door for a marketplace play, or bringing in other brands that are not just the wellness and supplements brands, really targeting it to new moms, and what are the supplements they might want to take, but what are the compostable wipes, or what are the Burt's Bees baby products that they might want as well. And so it's kind of just a snapshot of what we're doing on the site side, but underlying it, I think just as important, is the data systems. And so how we've built it, because it is a unified platform now, any feature that we build for one brand is very easy to roll out to all of the other brands, whether it's going to be a loyalty program or very simple cart checkout optimization. We can also do comparisons of benchmarks on one site versus another. All of this sits on Snowflake as data warehouse, segmented for event tagging to make it really easy to send data back and forth to our various partners. And so moving forward beyond tech, this is very much an eye chart. I will not go through all of it, but kind of just like a basic breakdown of what are the DTC core functions. A lot of it is honestly similar, or there's comparables. Maybe it's called a different name. Acquisition might be the media team, or retention, CRM, or lifecycle marketing. But slight pieces of what comes from a DTC playbook that I think makes sense to CPG, and it's a lot of what we've been trying to influence with the various brands. So for acquisition, for example, the idea of lifetime value. It's not just that first touch, it's not just that first click, but how do we actually follow someone over 9 months, 12 months, 24 months to say how do they actually engage with the brand. The really interesting part, I think, we're not totally there yet, is to be able to understand them across Clorox, across all of the portfolio of brands, and understand like what's the right time predictive to suggest which product, or to reach out to someone. Are they unsubscribing from one email, but they're so open to the Brita email? How do we get really smart about that? That zero-party and first-party data exchange, I think someone's going to talk zero-party as well. But essentially, getting consumers to opt in, right? We have done a bunch of tests of like, consumers are willing to complete a 10-question survey about volunteering their demographics, what are their health concerns, and so forth, in exchange for, a coupon, or sometimes like a gift with purchase. We have a free birthday gift in exchange for sharing your birthday. And so those are ways to get that definitive data that enhances our customer data platform. On the retention side, just moving from newsletter beyond to things like product-specific campaigns, and then post-purchase. How are we reminding consumers like how to use the product, when to subscribe again, or when to get a refill? Merchandising, I think, is really interesting. We do a lot of analysis on what do people look at from a PDP, what do they add into cart, and then what do they actually purchase? Like what are frequently purchased products? And it differs on someone who's more new to brand versus a loyal returning consumer. And so those are strategies then we can use that to create bundles when we do go into the Walmart marketplace, or we're having those conversations with Target. And so that's how we start to influence the omni-channel strategy and the actual merchandising strategy overall. A lot of the rest is really kind of what I talked about earlier, a ton of testing behind it, basically continually having, like for creative, 5 to 8 variations out there. We're always trying to beat, like, are we testing for lifestyle performs better than hard claims or numbers and so forth. But really this is in conjunction with the brand team to understand what might they actually replicate on national media or in their broader media buys, so that we're able to say, yeah, DTC, maybe our individual impact might be small because it's not the majority of revenue, but then that halo effect of taking that insight and multiplying it across is where the real power is. And then finally on data, a lot around that cohort measurement, which is innate to kind of startups, and then when we came into CPG, didn't really see a lot of that natural thinking, which is the idea of you follow someone, whether they come in from a Facebook campaign on, again, free gift with purchase, versus a Google search campaign, maybe they got a 25% off. Sure, maybe the Google campaign was cheaper initially and that initial ROAS looked better, but over time, we have seen cases where that Facebook influencer creative actually drove a better lifetime value. And so how do you make changes to your media plan and where you're allocating based off of something like that? So that's a lot. I'm happy to talk more if anyone has questions. Very quickly, I'll do a couple of quick examples. So this personalized lip balm campaign is one of those, what can we do that is exclusive to having a direct-to-consumer site, right? And so consumers can come in, they can put a little note on lip balm. It's a great gifting item. What we did, though, was use a national media ad, run it concurrently, bring those elements into the social campaign, and then have the specific product that is personalized lip balm. We saw great results. 4x revenue year over year, one of our top performing social creators, both new and returning consumers to the brand. I think a lot of this is that it allows consumers to have that self-expression, to have a little bit of fun, to be able to engage with the brand and show that they are loyalists to the brand. Another example, this past holiday, Burt's Bees did a Cleo Wade partnership. Cleo Wade's a poet, author, really talks about things like love and kindness, and so had exclusive set that you could only find in Target that were kind of Cleo Wade branded, had some of her affirmations on it. On pack itself, you could scan a QR code, and then starting from New Year's Day, you would get 30 days of daily affirmations texted to you through SMS. And so for us, that was obviously, there's a first-party data acquisition play. It is creating buzz, and because this was in Target, we were able to do a real splashy in-store retail play, and saw 16% year-over-year increase in revenue with Target over the holiday period from this. And so kind of sped through a ton of things. I think what I'll leave with is direct-to-consumer within CPG. I think it actually is a little bit of an anomaly that it's not necessarily about owning the transaction within D2C at the detriment of everything else. It's more like how to use D2C as a test bed that can then replicate into everything else. So speed to market is really key, not being perfect. Building brands through both a direct response lens, but also that creative. And then data, data literacy and data curiosity, I think is really what drives strategy and guides what we're doing at any point in time. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Awesome presentation. I was curious if there's been any friction with your retailer relationships as you've scaled your D2C, or perhaps put a different way, how have you kept your retailers happy?
Yeah. To be honest, I think it was more the internal sales teams that were worried than the actual retailers. But the way we positioned it is that, hey, the faster we can learn of which products are going to sell, which new innovations actually make sense, then by the time we come to you as Target, Walmart, Costco, you're going to move products so much more effectively. And by the way, we're learning about the audiences that we're willing to kind of come to the table with and share candidly on.
That was Brett from Chobani, and if anyone to know.
Hey Vivian, loved what you presented on today. Just had a question around your inventory fulfillment from a direct-to-consumer. Oh, sorry, my name's Natalie. Just had a question around your inventory fulfillment for direct-to-consumer. I know for many brands that can be sort of tough when you're selling pallet MOQs, but did you have to set up a new infrastructure, or did you integrate that into your current fulfillment system?
That's a great question, and it's the not sexy part of our job for sure. So we're essentially doing a bit of a hacky system where one of the business units was able to fulfill in each's, and so we're actually piping all of the brands and all of the inventory into that logistics node. It's part of what we're learning there, though, is part of a longer digital transformation journey now within Clorox to be able to sell in each's across the full system. And that enables both marketplace and dropship and D2C.
Sorry, I saw the person back there.
As we ask questions, please say who you are and where you're from, please. Thank you.
Hi, Vivian. My name is Catherine Sherrick, and I'm from Unilever, and I also really enjoyed your presentation. I'd love to know how you think of profitability as an objective for D2C, and sort of how management thinks about profitability, and just get your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's a conversation over a drink, but I think the short answer is that assuming, let's say, infrastructure and all of these things work, our margins are going to be better on direct to consumer. The volume is still fairly low, and that's where the pivot really has been. how are we in insights? Actually, my team, we switched from being in the sales organization to being marketing center of excellence because we are building capability about testing and learning at scale and delivering more audience insights, first-party data capture. And so we're really kind of quantifying that part of it in addition to the pure revenue and sales and P&L numbers now.
I think I saw someone else had a question here. Okay. Yeah.
Keith Bendes from Linkia. Just similar to that question, is your team responsible for more infrastructure setup, bringing some baseline data, or do you get pressure to actually show sales growth numbers for D2C?
It's both. So we do have sales targets and numbers for the various brands. Some, it kind of just naturally makes sense to where we're seeing 20, 30% year-over-year growth. For others, it's more maintenance. It's going to be a smaller percent of revenue, but we think that the insights is really powerful, like, for example, for the cleaning brand. So it's a case-by-case conversation that we have with the GMs of the various business units.
Are you allowed to speak to like what percentage of target of revenue you want D2C to comprise?
I mean, the reality is it's still fairly small for most of the brands. Supplements, wellness is the exception. I actually don't think that the idea is about aggressive growth to being 20% of revenue or something like that. It really is that data play more than anything now. And I think engagement, like consumers, especially with like cookies going away and so forth, it's like, what do you do with consumers that actually earns you the right to be in their inbox, to be in their text messages? And that's where like we're really focusing, is that owned experience side of things.
Philip Dennis from Meltwater. My question is really tied around, I guess, very similar to the prior two questions. Is D2C like for especially brands like under their portfolio that people don't say, oh, I can't wait to go to the Clorox website to link things up? Is the D2C strategy more around the data and learning about your customers to then help other strategies that you're working on? Or is it in a world like Nike who's trying to move completely to D2C and start selling your products 100% on your own channels?
Yeah, it's that learning side of things. We don't want to threaten the retailer relationships, but we feel like CPGs historically have just entirely relied on retailers to have that one-to-one. And obviously now that we recognize that we need to have our own pool and have that own reason to communicate with consumers. So that's where we're focused.
Hi, I'm Scott from Quigley. I was just curious how your marketing strategy has shifted as you put more emphasis on your D2C. And forgive me, I'm assuming that as a D2C brand with distribution in all the retailers, you're very much a traditional reach frequency model. And as you learn more about your customers, how's that shifted your targeting?
Yeah. So the other part of D2C that we kind of bring besides the revenue side is performance marketing and acquisition marketing expertise. I have folks on the team who have hands-on keyboard expertise on how do you actually manage campaigns towards ROAS targets and conversion optimize and so forth. And so we are also then bringing that into the BUs to tweak. Some of it is low-hanging fruit of, okay, how do we just optimize search campaigns differently? You're not necessarily going to sacrifice your reach or your brand growth, but we can be more efficient with the dollars. And so most of the media buys now are a bit of a hybrid where performance, or like my team, it's more short term. Let's say we want to see results in quarter, and then there's still a role for national media, for retail media that is brand building, maybe like a couple quarters ahead. And we'll just play with the ratio of the two, as well as what are the actual toggles and levers that we work through.
Hi, Vivian. My name is Rachel from Foster Farms. I'm curious to see how you guys are quantifying the data that you are collecting through your D2C websites. What kind of, I guess, business outcomes are you guys seeing, and kind of how are you pitching that to senior leadership and kind of the investment that the company's made?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say it's still work in progress. The easiest way to quantify or kind of data right now is improvements in paid media, right? Through lookalike targeting or use of audiences. What we really want to shift towards is more of that lifetime value. How can you use data to create stronger post first touch like engagement? And the more you do that, it's essentially free, right? You're not doing paid media, and that makes your ROAS initially better. So that's kind of what we're trying to do now.
Great. I think those are all the questions. Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you.